Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today started her business because she needed a solution for her son's severe skin issue. 2 Goats Milks later, it became the greatest of all time skincare. Please welcome the owner of Goats Skincare, Stephanie Bush. What's going on, Stephanie?
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having a lunch break with me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks
Since
for
we're,
having me.
of
It's
course.
been, it's been like tag. You're it. No, you're
Yeah.
it. You're it.
Well, I mean, we're busy people, so I totally get it, and I do appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. Speaking of lunch, what's your usual go-to lunch?
Oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed to say this, but I'm always on the go. So it's normally right now it's Chick-fil-A or Panera's or a pub sub because they're
Okay.
what's close to me in my driving range.
What's your pub sub choice of if you had to pick?
So the pub sub since I was a little girl is a Publix Ultimate. I don't care. It's Publix. I don't know why. If Boar's Head's on sale, I'll get Boar's Head. But I am such a Southern Florida girl. I want the Publix Ultimate on white bread, a little bit of mayo. I want the buffalo hot sauce right on top of my mayo. Then I get lettuce, tomatoes, black olives, cucumbers, peppers, and that is it. No
Okay.
cheese.
No, that sounds great. I love it. Okay. I got you. So let's talk a little bit about how all this started for you. Because I talked about goat's milk. I talked about Nolan and eggs and kind of like having bad eczema. So kind of talk a little bit about how give me the story. Give me a lunch break version of the story of how this all started.
All right, lunch break. It's crazy because my whole family is from Brooklyn, New York. So the idea of someone owning a farm in the family is crazy. But I used to live in Apopka and strict HOA guidelines and everything. You couldn't have any trucks with logos on it. And we owned a construction company and with the little tiny logo, it kept getting us hit with home HOA fees. So one day I came home from a business trip and Michael had taken me to a farm property and said, "This is ours now." So that's how we got the farm. That was the first step in this was we basically were tired of HOA for these smallest things. And then from there, it's just crazy how like things get set into motion. So I also have a daughter who's special needs who at the time was doing farm therapies. We were driving out to this Eustis area so she could do horse therapy and be with chickens and goats and all of that fun stuff. And then also the youngest Nolan, he was a few months old at the time when we got this. And basically his skin was so bad from head to toe. He had severe eczema. His I called it 3D skin, kind of like lizard skin. It got to the point where his whole body, this and now to everyone out there, this wasn't the first attempt. Nolan had gone to doctors and specialists one after the other. And then it got to the point where at first they were like, well, it's his nutrition. He couldn't keep breast milk down. He couldn't keep baby formula down. He couldn't keep anything down. And so it was kind of like a downward spiral of
Yeah.
gut, stomach, skin, everything. And it got to the point where his eczema got so bad that um his skin swelled up, it cracked open to the point where now he had these giant scabs on him that we are now treating with steroids and antibiotic, and then that strips your system as well. And
And isn't he like 7 months old at this? Isn't he
yeah,
like
he
super young
was.
like that?
So this was his first. So he's about to be 10 April 24th. And all of this happened literally from the moment he was born in April, and he was hospitalized on Thanksgiving of that same year.
Wow.
So it, I took him in to Disney Pavilion ER, and I said, "You have to admit him. There is something wrong here that we don't know what it is, and I can't take him home." And they admitted him that night, and he stayed. He actually was discharged on Christmas Eve. And
Holy
the
cow.
main thing they were treating was his severe eczema. I called him my little Michelin man because if you know the Michelin,
Yeah.
these big white marshmallow with all these rolls. And that was him. And it wasn't because he was a chunky baby. It was because he was so swollen from having skin
Swollen.
issues. They, I'll even send you the photo so you can see. I know you've probably seen it on Nolan's story where he's completely head to toe covered in medicated gauze. They had to unwrap him 3-4 times a day, slather his body down, re-gauze him back up. I mean, it was a horrible, horrible month. And finally, things just kind of started balancing out. He had to go through 4 blood transfusions. He had
My
some organ
gosh.
failure. They had no idea at the time what was going on. They sent us to the cancer floor thinking he had cancer. He went through everything. His medical book is literally like, I don't know if you know like the Art of War book, but it's like 2 Art of War books put
So
together. His
so
medical
during
records.
that time, is that like as you're in the hospital waiting and things like that? Is that kind of like when you started doing research on like what can I do? What can, that type of thing?
Exactly. So yeah, so basically I stayed with him for the entire month, and it got to the point where at first I didn't even think it was the eczema triggering this. I just started researching one thing after another. I even started researching cases that I found in like different countries. And a lot of times, uh, as Americans, we're very spoiled, and sometimes we don't think to look elsewhere when a lot of times there are foreign countries that have dealt with this and without using like steroids and medication that are so harsh that cause more issues, they're healing
Mm-hmm.
things that we're using steroids for with stuff that is organic and natural with absolutely no chemicals in it. And one of the things I did come across was in India, goat milk was the primary source of their calcium. And I found this doctor online where he broke down eczema and how eczema is triggered by what you eat, milk. People don't realize that dairy is a huge issue in eczema. So these babies are having severe rashes and skin issues from birth. And a lot of them who aren't on formula or even in breast milk, if that mother consumes dairy, you don't realize how bad dairy is for eczema
Wow.
flare ups. And so basically, when after he had cancer screenings, the rhinovirus, he had at this point his 3rd blood transfusion. His specialist came in, a blood specialist came in, Dr. Green in Orlando, and he basically said everything has to do with how severe his eczema is. It has now caused blood infections that are now wreaking havoc over his entire infant body. So when everything got regulated, I was really upset at how much steroids was being pumped into him and on his skin. And basically, okay, they were getting rid of the eczema, but Nolan's skin basically you touched it and it almost just kind of glided, like like what's the word I'm looking for? Like sloth. Like it just basically would come right off. And
Wow.
so when at the end of it, he goes, you could goat milk. And this is when the doctor at the end of discharge, he said, I want you to go and find goat milk soap. So this is Nolan's going to be 10 on April 24th. So this is basically 9.5 years ago. And 9.5 years ago, there was not a lot of goat milk soap
Yeah.
people selling it. And the 1 or 2 companies that were selling it, it had dyes and chemicals and tons of preservatives. And one of the things we found was Nolan is allergic to the red dye. And
Mm-hmm.
basically, any soap that has color in it at that time had this ingredient in it.
That die.
Yes, and they were extremely waxy. They were heavy in perfumes. Even the unscented one had some sort of scent to it. And so we already had the farm, and I went home and I started to research even more. And at the time, Facebook Marketplace, you could sell animals on Facebook. And I found a woman about 20 miles away from the farm who was selling 2 goats in milk. And I messaged her within 30 minutes. She said, you can have both goats for $200. I jumped in my brand new Ford Explorer. I drove to her farm. I put two goats in my Ford Explorer and drove them home. I had no idea what goats ate. I didn't know how to milk a goat. I think that first night when I tried to milk these two goats, it probably took me about 2 hours, and I probably got like maybe 2 ounces of milk because of how many times they kicked over the pail. But I was determined to do it. And I didn't even think to start making soap. Basically, what I was doing was twice a day, I was going out milking these girls, putting Nolan in his infant bathtub, and pouring raw goat milk into this bath and letting him sit and soak in it. And within 2 weeks, his skin did a complete turnaround. And then on top of it, I was like, okay, what else can we do with this? And then this is when I started researching the goat milk soap, um, the oats. So I got my hands on colloidal oats. Since we live out here, we also there's a wonderful honey farm like three miles from us. So I went and got natural honey. So in between his bath, I at this point I was taking the natural honey and actually putting it on the worst spots. So it was a mixture of colloidal oats and milk baths. I would grind it up and put it together and put little dabs of honey. And between those three things, his skin just started healing. And I knew I wanted those three ingredients in the first bar of soap that I made. So I started researching different oils, what was the best type of oils, like first press, cold press process.
Yeah.
I didn't even touch essential oils at this time because I needed a totally, completely unscented bar. And after about 2 months of research, I came up with my own little recipe. I made it, my first batch of soap. I still have a bar from it. I kept a bar. It was the ugliest batch of soap I have ever seen. Um, and I made him an oat milk. I made him a oats and honey goat milk bar of soap. After I made it, it took 4 to 6 weeks to cure. So in between that, I was still putting him in milk baths with the colloidal oats. And when that bar of soap cured, I started washing him with it. And I'm going to tell you right now, within a month, my son was completely eczema free.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That is it's super crazy. How so I have a goat first, my first goat question, and that is how often do they milk and how much milk do they produce when you like now that you've been doing this for a while, like how much like does it like do they produce milk every day? And is it like enough for you to like, for when you're producing and you're kind of when you're milking them?
So
Like how much milk does it actually produce?
So the
A little
the
goat.
amount of milk depends on actually the breed of goat. So when I first started to do this, I started with the cute little Nigerian dwarf goats. And then we had those for my first two girls that I bought. They just passed away a few months ago, but I had bought them and they were already at like 8, 9 years old when I bought them. And they were the best. I have to say, like, those goats were meant for us. They were the most loving. They were great milk producers. And like for me, not having any idea about farm life, goats, and everything, they were really the perfect goat. Like they had so much patience with me. So the smaller goats you can get about with good diet. The grass that grows naturally in Florida, unfortunately, has absolutely no nutrients. So you have to get them hay that has really good nutrients in it. Um, Now doing this for let's
Nine
see.
years.
Yeah, right. So I want to say, I don't want to say I've been a goat farmer for that long because the first few years were so trial and error, like what worked, what didn't work. I want to say like the last solid 6 years, I got it down to I know what foods they need to produce the most milk, what supplements. So now I went from the little tiny Nigerian dwarf goats to I have the big, like the goats that you see on the side of the mountain. Um, and for some,
Be like a billy goat.
yeah. So, so I'm trying to. If we were on Zoom, you could see it, but now I have the alpine goats, and they're beautiful. And I can also send pictures if you want to put with
Yeah,
this.
you can send me pictures so we can put it on the when I do
Yeah,
my reel. We can have a little add them to a reel on for them to be able to, so you can see all the goats. So you'll give me pictures of all the goats. We
Yes.
can definitely do that.
So right now I have a mix. I do have two very extremely spoiled Nigerian dwarfs, which were my first ever bottle babies that actually grew up in the house. And then now they free range. They do whatever they want on the farm. But my milkers are Alpine goats. And my Alpine girls, they are huge and beautiful and so regal looking. They give me about 2 gallons of milk a day. So to answer your question on how, so they're only basically they go into milk when they basically like a woman that when they have babies. And I do not touch them or milk them for the first, I want to say like month that they have the babies. I let the babies just feed off of them. When it's been about a month, then I'll start milking the girls while the babies are eating. And you don't have to do that. That's just a preference I have because, I feel like the babies need all the nutrients that they can get, especially the first day or two of colostrum milk that they get. And then so by that time with the babies milking on the moms, I normally get about 2 gallons of milk. And without the babies drinking from them anymore, you normally can go about 8 months to a year without refreshing them. And refreshing means basically allowing them to get pregnant again and starting the whole process. And then once they get pregnant, you stop milking. You don't do it. It dries. You let the milk bag dry up, it refreshes them, and then you do it all over again.
Wow. So at what point in this, because you originally, so when you decided to say, hey, I'm gonna start this as my first bar of soap. Like once you figured out, okay, this is my technique, how I want to make my soap. You started out as selling as Flying Goat soap,
Yes.
right? And then, so when you started that, what made you go, hey, I think I need to be able to start selling this stuff? Was it because I'm like, I'm already producing it and I figured it out and I want to help other people with it? Like what led you to go like, hey, I can make a business out
So
of this?
the thought of making a business out of it actually never occurred to me. It got to the point where, so because my soap has no preservatives in it, and anybody who has kids knows how horrible they are with soap. Like they wash everything but themselves in the bathtub. So the bars of soap at that time were going really fast with my kids because they like to squeeze them and make them into snowmen. And so I was basically making, it's called a loaf at the time, a loaf of soap, which would give me about 12 bars of soap. Now I like caught the soap fever. So now I'm making probably like, I want to say 4 batches of soap a week because it was also very relaxing to me. The kids would go to sleep. I would pull the stuff out, the stirring and mixing. It just felt good to produce something. But in doing that, I ended up with so much soap. So you really don't realize how many people out there suffer from skin issues, especially children. So when people started seeing Nolan's skin, they were like, "Oh my God, what are you doing that Nolan's skin healed?" And I said, "Oh, well, I'll give you some soap." So I was just giving soap out to anybody who needed it, who had skin issues, psoriasis, eczema, just severe dry skin. A lot of people were just
Yeah.
intrigued because they were like, they've never heard of goat milk soap before. And they're like, what? So then when I started explaining all of the benefits of it, they were like, I want to try this. So I just basically was giving it away to people who needed it, wanted to try it. But then I still had so much soap. And, one of my girlfriends was like, listen to me. It is wonderful that you're giving this away, but you need to start making money on this. And even with doing that, yes, made enough money to where I can buy more ingredients to make the soap. But one of the things that when Nolan needed goat milk soap, the bars of soap were like $15. They were anywhere from like 15 and there's one brand that they sold in Macy's where it was like $22 for a like 4-ounce bar of goat milk soap. And working families really cannot afford that for a bar of soap that lasts a week to 2 weeks to keep doing that for their kids.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing was, okay, I'm going to start at this point now, I'm like, okay, let me just start going to farmers markets and festivals and see how this does. But I want to make it affordable where people can actually afford this because people need this. Everybody needs it.
Yeah.
So that's how it kind of came there. And then the name Flying Goat. So we did a rebrand, but Flying Goat soap and that original logo just it like some days I sit there and I'm like, I really wish I didn't do that. But Flying Goat soap came from the boys. So now Nolan is probably about, I want to say 4 years old. And my oldest was going to start 4-H, where you show the animals in the school, basically. Like you raise them, you show them.
Okay.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure it's 4-H. Yeah. Well, funny story, he never ended up doing it. Okay. But in order to do that and to register your goats, you needed a name for the farm. So we had this baby goat named Red, and he would love running. He was the only goat that I've ever had to do this. He would run as fast as he could and dive off of things. And he would tuck his legs up underneath him. And I'll send you the picture of him doing this. He would tuck his legs up underneath him. And I swear it reminded me of like Michael Jordan just kind of floating through the air. And Jeremiah goes, Mom, we have flying goats. And so we named the farm Flying Goat Acres. And when it came time to start a business and do all the LLCs and everything, we took Flying Goat and just added soap to the end of that. And then the original
That works.
logo, if you remember, was very with the goat in the bathtub and super colorful. And the reason why the goat was colorful
Yeah.
was because our daughter has autism, and we wanted to also do something incorporate her without just an autism ribbon because the goats help her so
Yeah.
much. So we decided to put the autism colors into the goats. So that's how the
I love
original
it.
Flying
I
Goat
lo-
soap and the logo and everything came about.
so okay, so then obviously this happens. It starts, and things to kind of consider as you're doing this. You have three kids. And this brand is kind of growing. And I know you had an opportunity. I'm kind of curious a little bit about this because obviously I knew you were selling quite a bit online and doing farmers markets and stuff like that. But then you had an opportunity to go to like sell in New
Yes.
York for some time, which obviously I've always been kind of intrigued by this because like how did that come about? And then obviously because of that, that then led to a rebrand. So tell me a little bit about how that kind of came about, how a person from, even though I know you have roots in New York, but like you're in
Yeah, we're in
Florida.
Eustis, Florida.
You're in Eustis, Florida. How the heck are you going to Brooklyn and selling in New York? Is what I want to know. And then from there, how did you go from there to, hey, we got to rebrand and we got to change our product, and then you start adding other stuff. So let's talk a little bit about that now, about how you kind of went that in that
Okay,
direction.
so the brand that we have here in Florida, the Flying Goat, like I said, that is always going to have my heart. It's really like what they call like mom and pops, very farmy. Um, the farmers markets, if you've ever seen our booth, it's very farm. Basically, my logo is from our farm to your skin. So it had that whole
Yep.
look to it, which was great. People love that and things like that. But then when you get to, so basically what happened was is through mutual family friend, a amazing businesswoman, super intelligent. Like she's one of those minds. Her name's Amanda, and in New York, she is like the go-to marketing businesswoman. Like anything she touches, basically in business, is absolutely amazing. And she could basically pluck a vision out of her head and turn it into something real. And she started these pop-ups. And basically, at that time, with COVID had just happening, a lot of retail spaces went empty. People no longer were going out. You have
Yeah.
these empty mall spaces, other businesses. There's just a lot of empty space everywhere. So she went ahead and started building the concept in New York and even in California, where she was going to take a whole bunch of businesses and put them in one place and call it a pop-up. So she, if you're familiar
Okay.
with New York, Brooklyn, New York, she did a pop-up in Dumbo, in one of the historic landmark buildings. And it was beautiful, right on the water. If you've never been there, you should definitely check it out. And we were talking on social media, and she asked me, I made a joke. I said, well, if you need a goat milk soap, girl, let me know. And she was like, okay, well, how fast can you be here? And I thought she was joking. And I said, well, when do you want me? And she said, yesterday. And I said, what? And this was on a like a Monday or Tuesday. And she said, come on, let's go. And I said, are you crazy? I can't do that. Like literally, I spoke to her on a Monday and Tuesday, and I was in New York, my truck filled by Saturday, selling by Sunday, Monday. The whirlwind that went. But then when we got there, anybody who's familiar with New York, it's very, oh, what's the word? Like it's a different level. Everything. You have Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
You have, I mean, it's just elegant, classy. It's
They're
everything's high
I'm
end.
gonna say it. They're not buying. I'm gonna say it. Like there's certain levels, but they're not buying local farm
That's
stuff.
it.
Is how I'm gonna say it. It's like a Miami, or like they want the name brand. They expect a special bougie or a special
Yes.
level of
Bougie is
refinement
the perfect word.
in their
And here's the
product.
thing though. So you
Yes.
have communities like Park Slope, Dumbo, there are Williamsburg. You have these communities that love the farm aesthetic. They absolutely love it. But that we have the farm aesthetic, we needed to elevate it. So when I got
Yeah.
to Dumbo, Amanda sat down with me and was like, we all know your product is great. We need to elevate it. And that is how the rebrand happened. So basically, the rebrand was where I
Now,
can.
before you go into
Mhm.
hold on a second, before you go into rebrand, when you were selling at the time when you were selling at Dumbo, was it just soaps that you were just
Um,
selling? Or what was the product line at the time when you were, as Flying Goat went to New York initially, what was the items that they were buying?
so
Soap and what
so
else?
in Dumbo, so Flying Goat just started with goat or with soaps and lotions, and then we added the spray
Okay.
lotions, and then we added the soaps with loofahs. By the time I
Yep.
got to New York, Flying Goat was selling um goat milk so or all of the original things, but now goat milk sugar scrubs, whipped sugar scrubs with the goat milk, whipped body butters with the goat milk. We now had an entire men's line of shaving soaps, goat milk beard oils, goat milk beard balms. We had, oh my goodness, bath bombs. Um,
So you pretty much almost like doubled
Yes.
your
Yes.
product
And it
line.
was actually
Okay.
crazy to see, one of the best things about doing this, doing shows in different states, because Goat Skincare has been to Tennessee. We traveled, one year we did all the Southern Women shows. And it's crazy to see what things sell, what scents sell, and what things are popular in different areas all around. So things that
Yeah.
are huge here in Florida aren't even touched in New York. So my biggest sellers in New York were my body butters and sugar scrubs. And back to for a while there, my original what is it? Oats and honey bar and my milk and honey bar were my number one sellers. But we also have acne soap. So my acne soap became my number one seller. But when I went to New York, my original two bars once again became my number one seller because people over there, I don't know if it's all of the traveling, the walking, you have so much more smog and pollution over there. Basically, so many people had so many skin issues. So I would get my regulars that would come into Dumbo just for those soaps. And then while we were over there, I also networked a lot. And it's amazing the different groups of people that just filter through New York. Like it if you have not been to New York, I would suggest going there at least once in your life because the energy level is completely different there. And it is true. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere because New York is brutal. It is brutal.
So let's talk. Okay, so here are a few things that I'm intrigued by, because so now you're many hours away, and you're also making new product lines. So my questions are, some of my things that I was trying to figure out is, So obviously, at the time you had to had other people kind of working the milk, doing making product because I'm assuming there's no goats in New York for you to make product. So you're either having to either get product made and shipped over to you, and then at the same time, from what it sounds like, you doubled your product line, which means someone had to learn how to make these things in order to
I
make them
wish. I
at the
wish.
same time. So how did this all come about? Like how did you pull this off? Like how did you do that?
So, Michael stayed at the farm, and him and his mother actually milk the goats. We had milk being shipped overnight, goat milk, fresh goat milk with dry ice. So we freeze the goat milk, send it to New York. There was no one other than me making every single product.
So you and then were you making this in an apartment
So
or like
I
in
stayed
a
with
wherever you were
I stayed
staying?
at my cousin's house for the summer, and in their kitchen, I basically had things everywhere, everywhere. I made a few products at the actual Dumbo location. There was a back room, the things that I could when I could mix oils and things like that. I would make some there. But yeah, I did. The store was open from what was it, about 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I would have to leave at least an hour before with New York traffic to get from Staten Island to Brooklyn. So I would leave around 9 o'clock in the morning, no later than 9:30, head into Brooklyn and run the shop by myself all day long. Come home, you know, my daughter sometimes would go with me. My son was also there. The youngest stayed back at the farm. And basically it was a chaotic summer, but we pulled it off. I would come home get home around maybe like 8:30, 9 o'clock, and whatever products needed to be replenished, I would make that night a small batch of them and then take them back the next day to Dumbo.
Wow. Wow. So that's actually crazy that you are doing this all by yourself. You're creating the product. Obviously, like you basically were going nonstop, and at the same time, you decided to go with like the rebrand. So can you? I've always been intrigued with this because I mean I studied marketing, but I've never worked with a marketing consultant or anything like that. What are some of the things that they kind of brought? I'm kind of curious on like, are there any things that kind of stood out when they were talking to you about ideas or thoughts they were thinking about when you were talking about names and things like that? I know you and I actually, I would get random, Kristen and I would my wife would get tons of texts from you so that we kind of talk because you
At
were like, hey,
all
what about this
hours.
and what about that? And it was like a total collab for everyone to kind of come up with it, help come up with a name and stuff like that. So I'm kind of curious, like, on how that whole process went, and how you got that opportunity. Like, did the marketing company just come up to you and say, hey, we love what you're doing, we want to help you? Or because this is the same woman that was doing, that created the
Yes.
market, is that what it was?
So Amanda, who's in charge of them, like I said, a genius mind. Anything she wants, says, done, people know, let's get it done. They do not question anything. So she's one of these people that she picks up her phone, hey, I'm sending you someone. It doesn't matter if those people are booked for years, they squeeze you in because she made a phone call.
Wow.
It's like, you know what it reminded me of? The Devil Wears Prada. I don't know if you've ever seen The Devil Wears Prada.
Yep.
Like Marisa, whenever Miranda Priestley get her on the phone, that's basically Amanda in New York.
Okay.
That is who you're dealing with. So she already had all of these people underneath her, and she wanted me selling within like the next 24, 48 hours. And so I absolutely love you and Kristen, because I know there was that one time I'm like sending you text messages at midnight. What is
Yeah, but
this?
I love all that stuff. So like, and I love the fact that you were reaching out to us, but it was just kind of one of those. At the same time, I was like, damn, I'm like, how the heck does she pull this off? Where she's got like a per company that's working with her, and they're running through this,
It
and I
was
knew that the turnaround was so fast
Yes,
because
it would have never been that fast. It was literally because who Amanda has at her fingertips, and because of her reputation,
yeah,
and nobody wants to piss this woman off.
yeah,
So that is really the only reason that it happened literally within, I don't even think it happened within 48 hours.
Yeah.
I got to Brooklyn, New York. She showed me my space. We sat down. That's when she said, and the great thing too is she knew she was not going to offend me. And I really think that when people, in any type of business, if you're going to start a business, there is always someone who knows more than you, who's better at something than you. And you shouldn't take that as not competition, but you should really, if these people who are millionaires, super successful, see something in you that they want to take the time and pour it into you,
Yeah.
don't be offended. Take it completely open minded. You don't have to necessarily do what they say, but you definitely should open because here I am in a different state. I know New Yorkers, my mom, dad, my family. I know how they are, but I don't know
Yeah, you
more
don't
or
know their
less.
shopping tendencies and things like that.
I don't know how the heck to sell New Yorkers goat milk skincare. So
Yeah.
I wasn't even sure if they would like goat milk skincare. This was totally out on a whim. And she sat me down and she said, listen, your aesthetics of, hopefully that's the right word I'm
That's
looking
the right
for.
word. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is not Brooklyn, New York. It's very cute, farmy country, but you don't just want to stop here. When you look at this, and basically this is what she said. She knows I'm a huge Sephora shopper, Bloomingdale's,
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
those places. She goes, when you go into these places, you see crisp, clean, very like neutral type of looks. The ones that catch your eye, there's not a whole lot going on. And it's very like how the goat logo is now.
Yeah.
There is white background with a beautiful kind of like pastel color. And now I even take that and we switch it every month. And with the holiday seasons,
Mm-hmm.
my marketing manager that I have now, because I don't have the same team, I have a new one now, make sure that all of that is right there, changing the colors for the seasons, the logos, things like that. But at the Brooklyn time, um she knew she could talk to me without me being offended, and she
Yeah.
said, you need help from this point on. We need to get you, we need to elevate everything, packaging, the soaps, the branding of it, your Instagram. So basically, it went from, it's still farmy, it's still
Yeah.
me doing everything, but it's definitely got elevated, and you can really feel that with it.
Yeah.
And so basically, they took Flying Goat Mom and Pops into started to transition it into a brand that would be way easier to be picked up by a Sephora, an Ulta, a Macy's. Even I did notice with the rebranding, wholesale went up in spas, and I have a lot of like sugaring companies, waxers, things like that, the barber shops. As soon as the brand elevated, a different element of people basically came for it and they wanted it in their stores. So it was definitely something that was needed.
You guys came up with, and then the way it ended up, you guys ended up with goats. And it was kind of like, I'm assuming it's goats, but it was also like there's periods to it. So it's like the abbreviation of greatest of
Yes.
all time, skincare,
Yes.
is kind of what it is, what it became, which is great. I mean, it fits within the world. It's everyone knows what goats is and that whole thing. So it's a great
Mm-hmm.
way to go. And then the fact that's what I was kind of curious on, because like, so when you left New York, what happened to that whole concept of the Dumbo, kind of like the built-in little mini shop, mini, like it's almost like a mini market of small
Yes.
businesses. What ended up happening with that? Or like, is it still going on? And you just said, I
So
kind of,
it's no, so it is seasonal. So right now that Dumbo Market, there is a jewelry store in there called Adina's, which they were also with us, but they basically have that now. And the thing is where Dumbo is on the water. So during fall and winter, it starts getting really cold, and
yeah,
Dumbo is really like an outdoor. You enjoy
yeah,
it
it's
in the outdoors.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Yeah, so you don't get as much foot traffic. So basically, with that space, they were renting it to other things like that. But
Seasonal.
Adina is
Smart.
now, yes, seasonal.
So I also know that you expanded because you've expanded now besides those things, like besides the the body butters and all that stuff, you also have shampoo bars now too, right? And conditioner
Yes,
bars you
yes,
started doing with the goat skin as well.
yes.
Have you been how hard has that been trying to do research and trying to do like R&D to kind of create these things? Because you're obviously using which means then also a lot more milk is being produced or needed for you to be able to produce all these other lines of product.
Yes.
So how
So
many goats do you
it's
have?
so right now we have 10 goats.
Okay.
And the reason why this works good is because my big girls give me 2 gallons of milk a day. So basically that gets me every day doing that is you take it and then so with goat milk soap, it has to be frozen or else you'll burn milk. You can't do it just so it goes straight from the goat to my freezer. So, and we have a few deep freezers to keep it. So that's the nice part there. All of my products that do use the fresh goat milk, I always try to do those first, of course.
Yeah.
But you know, it's been crazy, and I am Kristen. Your wife could tell you I am probably one of the most chaotic people out there,
No,
and
I follow you. I follow your personal Instagram. Your life is
yeah,
chaotic because, and that's the part where I'm trying to figure out how you balance it because you got,
I
you
don't
know,
know, Anthony.
you have Nolan plays hockey. So like half
Yeah,
the time I'm seeing hockey. Brielle, like you mentioned, she's got appointments all the time, and
yes.
then you have Jeremiah, who's also a teenager who's like, so you have like, so you're dealing with like all these different, you're dealing with all these kids, plus you're running the business, having to milk, having to create product. And at the same time, try, build this. And obviously since you're, and are you the only person still making the product 9 years later?
Yes, I am. I am. You know, I have a real issue of just, I have tried, goodness. So I have tried to have people come and help me, and there have been some issues. And I never thought of myself as like OCD or an anal person, but I guess because this is like my baby and this means so much, like it has so much meaning behind it. It's like, why are you changing this up when I literally have it in like it's proof. Like all
I
you have to do is
literally
put it
told you,
together.
yeah, just do it.
Yeah. And then I also had one where, you know, I mean, I know I'm not a Fortune 500 yet.
Yeah,
Okay. We're just going to put that out there, manifest that.
exactly.
But I worked really hard on these recipes. So when I did have a few people come in to do it, I had already pre measured everything. So I have a very hard time, and it's not that I'm not a trusting person, but why are you asking me for my exact recipes?
Yeah.
And I've had in one of those humans, I won't say if it's a he or she, but one of
Yeah.
those humans actually went off and started trying to compete with my
Oh.
goat milk skincare business.
Oh,
And
wow.
you know, you do the shows and the festivals, you
Yeah,
know, and most of them know not to saturate them because then
correct.
nobody wins.
Correct.
And it kind of I don't wish bad on anybody, but Flying Goat Skincare, we've been doing this for quite some time. So we know these show people and stuff.
Yeah.
And when another goat milk person comes in and it almost looks like they're trying to copy you exactly, those people contact you
Mm-hmm.
and let you know. But my motto is, you know what? The world is huge. So you go do that, I'll do
Correct.
this.
I'll do
There's
this.
enough people in the world.
Yeah, yeah.
You
There's
know,
enough. There's McDonald's and Burger Kings. I totally get it.
exactly.
I totally get it.
Exactly. So with going through all of that, I also had shipping issues. Like all you have to do is print a label, put it on it, and ship it out. I mean,
Yeah.
I was having issues where things were not being shipped out. So it got to the point where I was working even harder now to do customer service, to communicate, to now
Yeah.
apologize, to backpedal. And so it got to the point where goodbye to everybody for now. I know one day I will have to
Yeah.
sit down again and do it, but right now I'm okay with basically killing myself
Yeah.
to make sure that it's the way I like it.
Is most of the business now online? And because I know you're not doing as many markets, and we're also getting in this weird season in Florida, obviously when it starts raining and all that stuff. So are you doing mostly
Yeah.
online and wholesale now? Would you say that's been like a majority of your market of your business?
Wholesale has been big the last basically since Dumbo. So since
Okay.
2021, wholesale has been big. And I will say this, my two top wholesalers, I have a few stores in a few different states, like cute boutiques, clothing stores that do the sugar scrubs, things
Yeah.
like that. But barbershops and waxing,
Yeah.
the
That's great.
wax studio, sugar waxing, Brazilian waxing, those have been great wholesalers because it's actually products that they need. Beard oils, the women and men who get waxed, my product does wonders for ingrown hair, smooth skin, it exfoliates. So it's a perfect addition to their studios.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of wholesale there. Yes, so you know what it is too with the markets? I'm so upset that I missed the Sanford and Deland markets. And pretty much I don't do any markets when it's hot in Florida because
It's hard.
of it's hot and none of my stuff has preservatives in it. So my stuff will melt if it is hot.
Yeah.
Um so it doesn't make sense for me to do markets. But basically I've been doing a lot of traveling back and forth and wholesale. It's been really nice.
Is wholesale mostly on like directly through your website, or is it doing it through Fair, or are you using it some another avenue, or do you actually have a person who does like a rep that actually does advocate, like does like a sales rep that does that for you?
All of the above. so so you can contact me through the website for wholesale, which
Yep.
I do have. I also I guess it's baby season, about to be wedding season, so I've been getting a lot of not wholesale but baby basically party favors.
Yeah.
So I've been getting a lot of party favors lately. But you can contact wholesale through the website. I get a lot on Instagram, so
Interesting.
many on
That's
Instagram.
awesome.
I will say that Instagram is probably has been the most consistent and best marketing tool. Um, Instagram, and the Instagram ads.
Yeah, I was gonna say about
Um,
ask about that.
Word of mouth. One of my barbers has it. In New York, basically the barbers all know each other somehow. So they get when, oh, you have a new product in store. Yeah, it comes from this girl in Florida. She's crazy with goats. And I will honestly say from day one, word of mouth has been the biggest blessing for my business.
What are some lessons, I guess, what are some lessons that you've learned along the way that if you had to do this again or we're starting this process again, not the whole, like the process of starting it, not the whole process of figuring out goat milk and all that stuff. Is there anything that you've kind of learned along the way that you're like, I would probably have done this differently, or maybe, or something like that?
I will say that I have learned you cannot do it all.
Yeah.
So when you said how do you balance it and everything, one of the things that was suffering huge was my website, like how it looked, because I was making product, being a mom, doing the farm stuff, going to the shows. We were right there with you. We were at,
Yeah.
I think there was one year where we didn't have a single Friday, Saturday, Sunday open. We were at shows up until like the day before Christmas Eve. And I remember sitting down and telling myself, I will never do a year like this again. Like it was an amazing year, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at the
Yeah.
same time, when you have kids, you kind of need to give them a quality of life as well.
Correct. It
And
takes a toll.
yeah, it really does. And so one of the things that was taking a huge toll business wise was my website. And I was trying to do it while I was Dumbo. When there were slow moments, I tried to build it myself. But I'm gonna be totally honest, I don't have the skill to build a website. Um, and I would just take real quick pictures and just throw it up there just to get it up there.
Yeah.
And so now you had everything else elevated except for the website. So the new marketing team that I have now really just you need help. You need help with basically marketing on the ads. You need help with Instagram. You need help with this website. And um, he really took it and just completely transformed it. And then that took Goats to the next level of where
Yeah.
we're at now.
That's
So
awesome.
I would definitely say that you can't, even though I know I do an okay
Even though right
job.
now you have someone, you're the packing department, you're the person, the farmer, the milk, the soap maker, the
Yes.
candlestick maker. You're
There is
basically making it
something.
everything. You're in everything.
There is something that is going to hurt when you think that you can do it all. And I wish I kind of didn't have that mentality from the very beginning,
Yeah.
because I would have been a little bit easier. Gosh, I'm trying to think what else. That I would say right now has been my biggest learning moment.
Okay.
Like, no, you cannot do it all. Um, what else? I mean, gosh, there are so many, when it comes to like farming, everyone wants to own a farm. Everyone's like, oh my God, you have the best life, a farm life. It is stressful,
It's a lot of
especially
work.
in the state of Florida. Yeah, so like our grass doesn't have the
The
nutrients
nutrients.
goats need. Now that it's hot, it's wormy season. Like
Yeah.
goats start getting infested, and it's sometimes a super heartbreaking job when you lose animals that basically become like your heart,
Yeah.
like on this farm, I was very shocked because at one of the Southern Women shows, a vegan came up and she was like, I'm a vegan, but I'm so intrigued. I read your sign where he said the benefits and everything like that. And her biggest question was, but how are your animals treated? And I pulled up Instagram and I showed her my personal Instagram. And then at the time, the flying goat one, where it shows the kids playing with the goats
Yeah.
and she still to this day, that was the first year I started selling. That was the first show we ever did. And she was from Tennessee. Still to this day, she has bought a monthly bundle of soap and it is the only non-vegan thing she uses. And she
Wow.
says it's because of the life basically that our goats have. And so I that's one of the biggest things too. But I guess if you don't have passion for something, it's not to me, I have a passion for it. So all of this is worth it. All the long nights, the tears, the stress, the
Yeah.
chaos, the oh my God, how am I going to do this? It's worth it. And the fact that it helps people is what keeps me going with
Yeah.
it. So
What and that'll lead me to this next one because I have two more before we wrap up. One is, what advice would you give someone that was looking to start something?
do it because you haven't done it yet. So what do you have to lose?
Okay.
I understand you have to put money into it, things like that. But if you do not try, then you will never know. And it could be the greatest thing that has ever happened in your life. It could change your life. It can start off as a little hustle that makes you 20, 30 to $100 a week and blow up to your full time. And I wouldn't even call it a job because you love it.
Yeah. It's full
You
time
have nothing
life.
to lose. Yeah, you have nothing to lose. Start. Just do it.
I,
Nike
lo-
over here. Just do it.
I love it. What so how can people find goat skincare? Tell people how where like the website is and all that stuff. All that's going to be in the show notes as well, but I always like to be able to let people know in case if they're listening, they can kind of maybe look on their Instagram and all that stuff. So what's the socials, what's the website? How can people find you and buy some of their own goat's milk soaps from
Yes.
you and scrubs and everything
So
else?
we will not be at any shows or farmers market
Yeah.
because if you are in Florida, it was like 98 degrees today. It's
Heck yeah.
hot. But you can find us 24/7 on Instagram at Goats Skincare. And it's two S, so GOATS, and then skincare. We're on Instagram. Our website is goatskincare.com. And the logo is a little teal goat in a bathtub. We also have a farm page. It's Flying Goat. It's still Flying. Did I change it, Anthony? I think it's Flying Goat Acres again. It might still be
Yeah, I'll
Flying Goat
check. I'll make
Soaps.
sure to look and see. I think it's still Flying Goat soap, but it's okay. I will make sure that it's on there because I'll get that information from you and we'll put it on the show notes so they can see it. And
Yeah,
then
and
they
you
can
give us a
follow.
follow, and
Yeah.
whenever my goats are pregnant and I'm able to catch it, I always put that on live. For a while there, we were having goats born like every week. I think one season we had like 27 babies, and I did like 15 Facebook, Instagram lives, and I had homeschooling parents during COVID, like using this as science
Their science
and
class.
curriculum. Yeah, watching the baby goat be born on live. And I do fun videos and stuff with the goats here. So I also try to post them. We do I always do sales, like there's sales going on. And I am going to give you can come up with your own coupon code.
Okay.
But basically, anyone who puts an order with your coupon code will get a free 8-ounce sugar scrub.
So I'm gonna a few little things, and usually I bring this up, but I really wanted to jump into the storyline. So I've known Stephanie for heck, how long have you known
And
Kristen, my wife?
our story is crazy. So Anthony's wife is used to be my daughter. So my daughter's special needs. And first off, this family is just absolutely amazing. I love you guys so much. Like you guys just have the purest hearts. Like you really are so inspirational, I want to say. The way you support the people that you love and even people that you don't know, the way you guys just go out like the biggest hearts of anyone that I know. I
Thank
just
you.
absolutely love you guys. And so Kristen was my daughter's speech therapist for the longest time. And then my son started going to Kristen as well for speech therapy. And one day we were at the market, I think it was the Sanford Indie
It
Market,
was. It was.
and Kristen came walking up one of the rows with Bella and said, Stephanie. And I think Brielle was with me sitting in the corner watching Jaws of all things. And I was like, oh my God. And she goes, wait, this is you? And I said, yes. I was like, what are you doing here? You just here enjoying it? And she was like, no, my husband has a booth. And we had already known you for like, I don't know, 2 years, I think it was.
It
And I had
was.
no idea. We had absolutely no idea how intertwined we were.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's crazy because we do use your soaps, and because my daughter has eczema, and we deal with it. I love them. So whenever I pretty much always use them. We always have a supply of goat's soap.
I know,
Uh,
and I need to restock you too now that I
because
think about
that
it.
stuff, because it's great. It feels, you notice the difference. It feels good. There's a reason why all natural, how it feels on your skin and how your skin feels. And so that's one of the big things that like I'm definitely a fan of it. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to actually have you on, because that was one of the big things, was like I use this product. I believe in this product. Plus, not to mention, I absolutely love your story on how it even started. I think those are some of the most amazing things when I get to talk to people who've like had a problem, were able to solve the problem, and then look at a way to be able to solve other people's problems because of it. And I think that's the part that I find to be so inspirational on your part. Not to mention, like, you just mad hustle, and I like, to me, that's the thing. Like the fact that, like, when you said you went to New York and you're like, oh, I gotta go to New York, and I was like, where the hell is she going? How's she doing this? And she's like, yeah, she's just gonna load up the car. They're gonna go. And I was like, how is this happening? And I mean, that takes a lot. That takes a lot to like to be like, hey, I'm gonna do this. This is my opportunity that's knocking, and I'm opening the door, and I'm freaking running. I'm not even like I'm not even gonna like think about it.
It was
And
terrifying.
you
It was
solved it,
definitely
and
terrifying.
I bet it was. But look where it's at now. I mean, and those are some of the things that's, to me, that's inspirational to me, because a lot of people don't take that opportunity. And I think that's one of the reasons why I'm like, I find you so inspirational in that aspect,
And
because
that's why
the
when you
hustle's
ask me
real.
when you ask what is the like number one thing you say is do it,
Yeah,
literally. So if you don't take the opportunity, you're the only person holding yourself back. If the
correct.
opportunity is given to you, take it. If the opportunity is not given to you, so what? Make an opportunity. Open the door. Keep knocking on doors. Someone is going to open eventually.
I love it.
Yep.
I love it. That's the perfect way to finish our show. So that's our show for today. Thank you so much, Stephanie, of
Thank
Goat
you.
Skincare, for being on and having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to
Thank you
check
for
them out
having me.
online. Goats Skincare, double S's, .com. Make sure you go check them out. If you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to subscribe. Make sure you tell your friends about my brand, Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping there. Wear some of the stuff. If you do buy the product, I will be dropping a code on there, so that way, if you, I'll make sure to drop a code on the show notes, and possibly online for you, if you can get a discount, or get a little treat from Goat Skincare if you do order. Thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.